Suffered a curious pain known only by overnight success stories called vertigo, a feeling that he was going right when actually he was going left, a loss of overall equilibrium. Both privately and publicly, he often hurt and sometimes hurt those people around him.
We all remember where we were when the news broke. It was April 1st, the cruelest punchline in the history of soul music, and the world woke up to the impossible. Marvin Gaye was gone, shot in his family's LA home by his own father. As sirens lit up South Gramercy Place, neighbors poured onto lawns, sobbing and stunned, huddling behind yellow tape as the coroner rolled out a body bag. Inside, LAPD investigators were in for a scene that would haunt even the most jaded. There, behind closed doors, they made a discovery in Marvin's bedroom so unexpected, so chilling, that even seasoned detectives were left whispering in the hallway. The room became legend. We still don't know every detail, not officially. Police reports remain sealed, and family members, those who'll even talk, just go tight-lipped and shake their heads. So what exactly was found there? And why has the answer stayed locked up, guarded for decades, even as every other part of this family drama was picked clean by tabloids and true crime podcasts?
Music has gone through how many phases, if you would group it?
Well, I don't know how many phases my music's gone through. I write my music according to my lifestyle. If I'm sad,
The rumors, of course, have taken on a life of their own. A secret tape, an unfinished gospel album, handwritten letters in a trembling script, coded for someone he couldn't trust. It's said there were days in those final weeks when Marvin barely left that room, not even for the bathroom. His mother cooked for him, prayed with him, rubbed his feet as he huddled behind a locked door, the shades drawn, a revolver in one hand and a Bible in the other. Dealers came and went. Friends say he could barely tell night from day, and yet something kept him writing. That's what the detectives found, a stack of cassettes and scraps of lyrics, plus, depending on which insider you believe, a collection of home-recorded tapes labeled only with his father's name. Could Marvin have been planning a final olive branch? Or were these songs confessions, the last desperate messages of a man circling his own end?
3 or 4 things. One thing was I was undergoing 2 divorces at the same time, which can be rather traumatic.
It was by any measure the ultimate twist in an already unfathomable story. Marvin Gaye, the velvet-voiced king who made love anthems and protest songs sound like two sides of the same broken heart, cut down in the same house he'd bought for his parents just one day before his 45th birthday. This was supposed to be the soul legends' comeback era, the phase where legends settle old scores and bask in a second act. After all, he'd just pocketed a couple of Grammys for stealing, rewritten the Star-Spangled Banner in front of the entire NBA, and finally clawed his way out of Motown's long shadow. But what looked like triumph on stage was chaos at home. The kitchen arguments, the midnight rants, the protection revolver he handed to his father that Christmas. By spring, Marvin was paranoid, hunted by IRS agents and old enemies, seeing assassins in every shadow. The only person he really feared was the man in the next room, the same father whose voice he tried to outsing for decades.
I don't think most people knew Marvin Gaye. In fact, I think there were moments when Marvin Gaye did not know Marvin Gaye. Like his music, his life swung between periods of being in love, when he'd sing, "If this world were mine, I'd make you a queen," to periods of great paranoia when he would sing and mean, "I heard it through the grapevine," through periods of rising social and political relevance when he would ask in song, "What's going on?"
The family drama at the heart of all this reads like Greek tragedy with a Motown soundtrack. Marvin Sr. was a Pentecostal preacher, hard drinking and harder to please, a man who kept a suitcase of women's clothes and a running tally of every slight from his son. For Marvin Jr., the beatings started early. The jealousy only got worse as his music career took off. Even as a global star, Marvin kept returning to that house, to his mother Alberta's kitchen and his father's icy stares. Friends watched the two men circling each other like old boxers, each jab, each insult, each attempt at reconciliation ending in violence or humiliation. According to a former road manager, there was a standing threat in the family. If Marvin ever raised his hand to his father, it would be the last thing he did. And that wasn't just empty talk. Alberta told a biographer he used to say that he didn't think Marvin was really his child. For some reason, he didn't love Marvin, and what's worse, he didn't want me to love Marvin either. It's hard to overstate how much that house felt like a powder keg with a gospel choir for a soundtrack, and then came the whispers, the gospel tapes, the secret project. 3 industry veterans insist Marvin had started work on a set of recordings meant as an atonement album, songs to heal the decades of bitterness with his father, maybe even a way to let his old man preach over his music. Was this just another one of Marvin's grand half-finished ideas, or could these tapes hold the real reason behind his final days of paranoia and self-destruction? Motown hasn't commented, and nobody's produced a finished track. But the very possibility has kept collectors and family members circling the estate for years, each hoping for the lost masterpiece that would finally make sense of the violence. One LA lawyer says if those tapes ever surface, the whole story changes. But what would they really tell us? about the music, about Marvin's final reckoning, about that last locked room. It's impossible to overlook the revolver, the infamous .38 caliber pistol Marvin handed his father as a Christmas present just months before the shooting. He said it was to protect the house, but even that phrase reads like a dare or a twisted prophecy. Was this a gift or a warning? A family member told police that Marvin had talked openly about ending his own pain, and there are still those who believe this was all a drawn-out, orchestrated act. Marvin's final attempt to force his father's hand and guarantee his own exit would make headlines forever. Whether you buy that theory or not, nobody can ignore the timeline, the gift, the arguments, the last brutal fight, and then 8 minutes later, the fatal shot.
Need a little R&R?
Well, I just needed really liquids. I was totally dehydrated. I've suffered from that 3 times in my life, and I kind of hate water, you know, and I never replace it.
And what about Marvin's state of mind? Here was a man who could move crowds of 10,000 to tears with a whisper, who could write what's going on at the exact moment the world needed to hear it. Yet behind the stage lights, he was unraveling. The pressure, the fame, the family legacy, it all fed a spiral of anxiety and obsession. Those closest to him describe a man convinced he was being hunted, a man who wore a bulletproof vest off stage and carried grudges the way most people carry groceries. In the months before the shooting, he rarely left his room except to argue with his father or comfort his mother. One former assistant claims Marvin kept a tape recorder running in the background at all times in case he didn't make it out. The only thing more haunting than what he recorded is what might still be hiding, buried in police evidence or locked away by the estate. The legal fallout would become its own kind of shock. Prosecutors came in swinging but found themselves with a weak hand, a bruised and battered 70-year-old defendant, a lifetime of mutual abuse, a brain scan revealing a tumor the size of a walnut, all the ingredients for a courtroom drama, and yet the final verdict barely made a ripple. Voluntary manslaughter, a suspended sentence, no jail time for the father who'd ended the Prince of Motown's life. The judge said locking him up would be a sentence of its own. Maybe that's true, but in the years since, the real questions have only deepened. Was this crime or self-destruction, punishment or liberation, a tragedy that could have been avoided, or the only ending Marvin Gaye ever believed was possible? What really happened in Marvin Gaye's room that day? And what secrets were left behind, frozen in time, waiting for someone brave enough to press play?
Music had no consistency other than its occasional brilliance, and his life also had the same lack of consistency, which was painful. His life was and is a study of black men of his generation, a first-generation success story who found fortune and fame and then found it difficult to manage or even hang on to either one of them.
We saw the world mourn a legend, but beneath the headlines and funeral tributes, the deeper wounds in Marvin Gaye's story run along the fault line of faith and rebellion. A war not just of fists and tempers, but of gospel and temptation, heaven and everything that pulses beneath it. For Marvin, every note he sang was a battle against his father's old-school gospel dogma. Marvin Sr. led his house with the iron fist of a self-proclaimed prophet, ruling over his 4 children with sermons, discipline, and a scriptural belt. He dismissed Marvin's music as the devil's noise, convinced his son's sensual songs were a ticket straight to eternal punishment. Imagine growing up with a man who looked at your biggest hit and saw only blasphemy. Every chart topper just another reason to turn up the volume on his own disapproval.
I can say that you have always loved people.
Oops.
Even from a small child, you know, when Father used to take you to church.
We know the young Marvin tried to bridge that gap. He sang in the church choir, sought out the pulpit's approval, tried to use his gift to please the one man who never smiled when the applause came. But every lyric, every falsetto, only pushed the 2 men further apart. A Motown insider told us off record, Marvin kept reaching for something sacred in his music, but his father only heard sin. The tracks that made the world fall in love, Let's Get It On, Let's Healing, even the righteous What's Going On, all became lightning rods for the senior Gaye's scorn. It was the oldest story in the book. A father building his life on strict faith, a son building his career on pleasure, protest, and every kind of longing. Even as Marvin made millions for his mother, as he moved the nation to tears with social anthems, his father's jealousy curdled into something toxic. He hated it when my singing won more praise than his sermons, Marvin confessed, and so the tension simmered for years, a kind of slow spiritual combustion, until one day, the spark became a fire.
And your main ambitions when you was a little boy, very young, you wanted to go in show business. And I think you probably have accomplished some of the things that was...
That fire? The argument that ended everything, set off by something as small as an insurance letter. At least, that's the official story. The infamous missing letter was, on its surface, a bureaucratic mess. A misplaced piece of mail about a family insurance policy. Just paperwork. But in households where secrets are currency, a lost document can mean so much more. We've heard from more than one biographer that the real contents of that letter may have had nothing to do with life insurance. Theorists point to financial strain, rumors of fraud, maybe even the threat of a revised will that would have cut someone out or brought a hidden relative back in. Some claim it was evidence of cash being siphoned out of the house by a third party, possibly even a quiet attempt to protect Alberta's future if the family blew apart for good. The LAPD seized it but never made the details public, and the official files were kept as cold as the room where Marvin's body lay. Alberta, the one person who might have told the truth, clammed up and left her husband within weeks of the shooting. Whatever the letter held, it was enough to trigger a shouting match so fierce it shattered the last thread holding the family together. Even for a household already battered by years of shouting and silence, the timing of this final explosion felt suspicious. Marvin had retreated to his childhood home to escape stalkers, creditors, and a government ready to pounce over unpaid taxes. His mental health was spiraling, and his paranoia had become the kind you can see from space. Yet he kept returning to this minefield, moving his bedroom down the hall from the very man who'd haunted his nightmares for decades. The old man, meanwhile, slept with Marvin's Christmas gift, loaded, polished, ready, tucked under his pillow. For months, the entire house trembled on the edge, everyone waiting for the next outburst. And then, over a lost letter, the floodgates opened.
I probably can't express it to you exactly how I felt, but it was a terrific feeling to know I think about my son.
But was the insurance letter the true spark, or was it just the excuse? Family members and ex-associates have speculated that it might have been a red herring, a cover for much deeper betrayals. The Gaye family's legacy is littered with secrets. Whispers about a forbidden affair. Some say a close friend, others claim a relative, had reached Marvin Sr. long before that April day. Sources who live nearby claim the old man had become convinced that Marvin's success was tainted by personal shame. We're not just talking about financial disputes, but relationships that would have upended the family tree if proven true. A PR firm once handling Motown's crisis management says they fielded calls about hush money, paternity claims, and threats of tell-all books. Was Marvin really trying to make amends with his father, or did he hold evidence that could destroy what little dignity the old preacher had left? That, more than any lost letter, could be the kind of betrayal to push a man past the point of no return. As we sift through the layers, the lines between self-destruction and sabotage start to blur. Was Marvin's demise a slow-motion accident, an icon finally crushed by the weight of his family's curse? Or, as his own sister once suggested, did he orchestrate the ending as a grim act of liberation, forcing the hand of a father who'd promised for decades to take him out if he ever crossed the line? Some in the inner circle believe Marvin set the stage for his final act with a chilling precision. He was well aware of his father's threats, of the loaded gun under the pillow, of the bargain he was making by shoving the old man down the hallway that day, and he knew better than anyone that the world would be watching the fallout. Was it an act of despair, a calculated escape from the torment, or a final blow in a lifelong chess match? We may never know for sure.
Because in this life, I love music, and music is my love, you know, it's all I know.
For years, the idea that Marvin Gaye orchestrated his own exit has hovered over this case like smoke, refusing to dissipate even as others rushed to call it just another family tragedy. Those who knew Marvin best describe a man who wore his suffering in public, who spoke often about not being able to go on, and who seemed to invite catastrophe right to his doorstep. His struggles with deep despair, crippling anxiety, and self-medicating habits were no secret, and by the time he moved back into his parents' home, many noticed he was already unraveling. But it's the details of his final days, the calculated way he needled his father, the gift of the very weapon that would end his story, the locked room rituals, that have fueled speculation about whether Marvin's end was less about sudden rage and more about an elaborate plan, staged by a man who saw no other way out. Adding fuel to the theory is the chilling aftermath when Marvin's brother found him in his final moments and heard those now legendary words, "I got what I wanted." To some, this was nothing less than a confession, the ultimate admission from a man who could not bring himself to take the final step alone. If this was a self-inflicted tragedy by proxy, then every decision Marvin made in those final weeks, the confrontations, the provocations, the gift of the gun, reads like a series of deliberate moves, each designed to push his father to a breaking point. This was not the first time Marvin had courted oblivion. Friends recall failed attempts, dangerous stunts, and a pattern of behavior that seemed always one step away from the edge. If his music was a plea for understanding, maybe his final act was a demand for release. Of course, we're left haunted by the possibility that what looked spontaneous was in fact a meticulously crafted exit. Was the violence simply the tragic outcome of a lifetime of pain? Or was it the culmination of a scheme only Marvin understood? his lifelong dance with inner darkness, his confessions of feeling trapped and unwanted, and his desire for his father's attention all seem to converge in those last fateful minutes. This theory doesn't erase the horror of what happened, but it does force us to question who, if anyone, truly held the script. In the end, the elaborate demise story is both a warning and a riddle, leaving us to wonder whether Marvin Gaye was the ultimate victim or the tragic architect of his own final act.
Speak for myself and my relationship with Marvin.
The tragedy is that we're still left with as many questions as answers. The police closed the case, the lawyers moved on, and the world keeps dancing to Marvin's music as if none of it ever happened. But in the shadowy corridors of family drama, old grudges and lost secrets never really disappear. We can't ignore the weight of a legacy where every triumph was paid for in pain, where every sweet melody carried an echo of loss. Did Marvin Gaye spend his entire life trying to win a father's love that was never his to claim? Or was he always daring that same father to pull the trigger just to prove the old man would never change?
We have unconditional love for each other, but we were still human beings.
Yeah.
We weren't superhuman.
As we look back on the most shocking end in Motown history, the whispers still circle. Hidden tapes, missing letters, forbidden loves, and a family curse that outlasted its most gifted son. The truth about Marvin Gaye's final moments may never be fully uncovered, but one thing is certain, this story is far from over. Do you think the world will ever know what really happened in that room? Or is the real story still hidden in those lost tapes and sealed files? Drop your wildest theory in the comments, because in the house of Marvin Gaye, the secrets never stay buried for long. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and remember, every legend is built on a truth no one dares to speak.